Tim, you remember 2003?
Yeah, I was a wee 10-year-old lad.
I was 5, but we're still here. Just us two. The last of Bomb Squad! Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to The Last of Bomb Squad. We're going to be talking about The Last of Us TV show. Specifically, we're going to be starting off talking about episodes 1, 2, and 3 of the new HBO show, The Last of Us. And before we get into the show, I just want to real quickly, briefly discuss our history with the games. So, Tim, whatever you want to say about the games, get it out now.
Yeah, I played the first game when it came out. Absolutely loved it. I specifically remember when they dropped that announcement trailer at the VGAs, I think in 2011, and I pre-ordered that shit at GameStop like the next day. Because I just immediately knew that I wanted to play the shit out of that game. Yeah, I love the games. My memory on the first one is a little fuzzy just because it's been 10 years, but I remember the major points of it enough that I am going into this show and like interested to see where it does things a little bit differently, but it's also just kind of a nice little refresher of the game that I loved. I also really liked The Last of Us 2, which, you know, obviously is, it's become sort of a polarizing game, but it's real good if you give it the right chance. Like, it's not perfect. It does some things not so great, but there's also a lot to appreciate about it.
I think the second one's more ambitious for the first one, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Unlike Tim here, I wasn't really aware of The Last of Us until after it already came out. Which is weird, because I was always a big fan of Naughty Dog. I love the Crash games, I'm a pretty big fan of the Jak and Daxter games, and the Uncharted games feature some of my favorite games of all time, especially Uncharted 4. I fucking love Uncharted 4.
Mm-hmm.
But The Last of Us, I don't remember being very excited for. I picked it up maybe half a year after it came out, because I want to say it came out in early 2013. And I knew it was something special when I started playing it, and it had me crying within the first 10 minutes. And me 10 years ago was not as quick to cry as I am now. I understand it's a bit of a running joke with the cry counter and everything that I'm easy to cry, and once upon a time that wasn't true. I was very much a tough shell. It was hard to make me crack. And literally just a few years prior, the first video game that ever made me cry, period, was Infamous 2. So The Last of Us made me cry that quick off the bat was something special, and I fell in love with it pretty immediately. I think the gameplay is immensely satisfying. I think the stealth mechanics are great. The shooting mechanics are great. It is the first time I played a video game where part of the mechanics is scarce resources. You're struggling to get bullets, you're struggling to get materials for anything, and usually in most games, I find that kind of deeply annoying. But in The Last of Us, I actually found it immensely satisfying, and the crafting system to be immensely satisfying, but the story is really where it shines. I like to say my favorite video game ever is Star Wars Knights of the Republic, for similar reasons why I love The Last of Us. I love the story. The Last of Us is probably my second favorite video game ever.
I would say The Last of Us is probably somewhere on my top 5. Like, I don't know what exactly the numbers are, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah, I don't really know what the numbers are after 1 and 2. It's variable. I was very excited for part 2. I pre-ordered that shit. I got it the day it released. I played it, and I really do love The Last of Us Part 2. Like Tim, I think it misses the mark in a few aspects. I think the second game suffers more from a disconnect between player input and the cutscenes more than the first one does, because the message of the second game is all about how violence is bad, the cycle of revenge is bad, and yet they make killing very satisfying to do. I think the gameplay is better in the second one. I think the story has more ambition. The execution is not quite as there, but that's what you're going to get when you try to get more ambitious with it. So when they announced that they were going to do a Last of Us TV show, I was excited. When they announced that Pedro fucking Pascal was going to play Joel, I got very excited. And it all led up to January 15th of this year, where the first episode came out. When You're Lost in the Darkness. Whew, what a starter episode, right, Tim?
Yeah, I do really appreciate that the cold open is not something from the games. It's this thing that just sort of sets up the story with this talk show talking about how fungi might be able to...
You're a fun guy, Tim.
Yeah. Why, thank you, Tim. You're a pretty fun guy, too. But he's talking about how a fungi could potentially take over the human brain if certain conditions were met, like the Earth started to get hotter, and as a result, fungi started to evolve to be able to withstand that heat. Global warming's great, guys.
And then we all looked around like, hey, wait a minute. I shit you not, after that cold open, I Googled it to make sure that cordyceps couldn't actually jump to us. We're way more complex than insects and ants. They would have to evolve it would take several generations of evolution for them to even start to try and affect us. So we're safe for now.
For now. But my grandkids, they can deal with that, whatever.
That's a them problem.
After that, we see what was the prologue of the original game, which is Joel with his daughter Sarah, sort of seeing the beginnings of the outbreak and just shit all hitting the fan. There's a little more build up in this, though. I really did enjoy the bit in the school where they're really punctuating the teacher, going this is important. You'll need to know this for the test that you will be taking.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god, stop fucking lying.
I really like how much they expanded upon this prologue. In the game, there's a little bit of Joel and Sarah before shit hit the fan, but then it's pretty much exactly right as shit hits the fan. And Joel trying to protect his daughter. In the show, they really draw it out. There's the radio message saying, something's going on in Jakarta. And then, there's all the emergency vehicles going by. And then you see the planes flying overhead. Just this sense of dread the show builds up is something it does differently from the game in an incredibly, I think, a great way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It all kind of culminates in that moment where he's holding her in his arms and he gives the performance in full Pascal excellence. And Tanner, you didn't have to say anything this time.
Dad's rock, baby!
There it is.
No, he lost his daughter. Fuck. Holy shit. Fuck. It devastated me when I played the game for the first time. And as I've grown older and more mature, and especially as my little sister, I mean, she's my sister, not my daughter, but as she's grown older, she's about Sarah's age now at this point. And I saw my sister in that moment, and that was a lot to take in. It's an incredibly devastating moment because it didn't have to happen. Everyone was just scared and confused, and it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And then we hit 20 years later. We're introduced to the quarantine zone in Boston in a bit of a different way than in the game, where we just see a little kid walk up to the quarantine zone, and the Fedra soldiers are like, hey, buddy, they checked see he's infected, and then you don't know what happened until you see Joel throw his body in a burning pile of bodies. And you realize, like that scientist said,
we lose.
And we fucking lost.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're introduced to Joel and Tess, which I do want to say Tess, Annie Wershing, is the actress that plays her in the game.
Deal went off without a hitch. Enough ration cards to last us a couple of months, easy.
She is a St. Louis native. She went to a high school right outside of Forest Park. And just a couple days ago, it came out that she died. Cancer. She brought life to this character. I know Anna Torv does a great job in the show, don't get me wrong.
You try climbing 10 fucking floors with our knees. See how you feel.
But Annie Wershing is part of the reason why she was such a sensation in the game, and it's such a shame that she's gone now.
There's enough here that you have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's.
Show Tess and Joel, I love their dynamic. You already see how things are a little flipped. You see more intimately what Joel's smuggling business looks like. And we also are introduced to Ellie, who's played by an actress by the name of Bella Ramsey. And they're fantastic. They got Ellie's fuck all of you mannerisms down perfectly.
Yeah, I've been seeing people talk about how, this actress looks nothing like Ellie. They embody the character. That's way more important than the look.
Pedro Pascal doesn't look that much like Joel.
Yeah.
Joel isn't Hispanic.
But he could be.
He is not, but he can be tomorrow. Ellie and Joel meet. We're introduced to the Fireflies. A lot happened in this episode, and all culminates in this great moment at the end where Joel gets a flashback to his daughter dying and then just pummels the shit out of a soldier.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that like this show really is able to capture that is different from the games. Is like you get this moment where we're seeing this character reliving his trauma and acting in response. As opposed to, it's a video game. You have to just get yourself out of the situation.
Press X to punch.
Right, exactly. Which I think it just adds something to the story.
It's a powerful moment. It really adds something to the story. I think we kind of see Ellie's potential desire for revenge being built here.
One more thing before I guess we move on. I do want to address Marlene's actress, Merle Dandridge, who was returning from the game.
Did I think that they would actually cast me? No, I didn't. The hundreds of people that work on the game make you look like Marlene. I had a couple of things on my side, which was I grew into her, I aged into her a little bit, and I guess my deep passion and love for her.
She does a great job in both versions.
She's great in the game, and she's great in the show. I would have never guessed that it's the same actress, though. That's kind of insane. In a good way. Episode 2?
Episode 2.
Infected! Holy shit, the clickers are fucking terrifying!
Clickers are pretty good. That was another like featurette thing where they were like talking about they really wanted to make sure they got the clickers just right.
And getting the clickers right means that people who played the game will go, that's it. And people who haven't played the game are gonna go, oh my god.
They're terrifying. They're disgusting. They're creepy. You know what else was terrifying? Yeah, no. The opening. You know what's fucked up when you ask the scientist, how do we fix this? And the scientist responds with, bomb the shit out of us.
Yeah, she went full end of Return to the Living Dead, just like, I have the solution, a nuke.
Once she was informed that there were 14 people missing, she knew that the only hope for humanity was to somehow contain it in the city. But we also find out in this episode, and it's elaborated on slightly in the next episode, that was a flower factory. The cordyceps got in the flour. Jakarta, Indonesia is the flower capital of the world. It was over for humanity the second it outbroke there. Not a ton to say about this episode other than the first encounter with the clickers is terrifying, and Tess's death is different from the game, but I think in a more effective way. Episode 3. Long time. Gay up!
Gay up.
This is by far the biggest change from the game they've made so far. In the game, we don't even fucking meet Frank. And Bill being gay is at best implied, except for the gay porno mag, which is played up for a joke. It's very different here. How about you take the swing on this one first?
Yeah, so like we're kind of starting with a little bit with Joel and Ellie. They were raiding a place for supplies, and then they're going towards Bill's house. They do kind of expound on that whole like flower thing.
Best guess, cordyceps mutated. Some of it got into the food supply, probably a basic ingredient like flour or sugar.
There was one moment in that little exchange that made me laugh.
I thought you went to school.
Federal school, teaches how their shitty government failed to prevent a pandemic.
And I was just like, it's too real. And like, it's weird now seeing Ellie as this person who has lived her entire life in a pandemic. Because like, I work in elementary schools as a photographer, and I have a nephew who was born in January of 2020. So like, I've seen people who the pandemic's all they know, and it's just wild how much it changes things. But I guess to not dwell on that too much, we'll move on to the Bill stuff.
Wow, one of the most beautiful gay romances I've ever seen with a happy ending. Some people are calling this a sad ending. Fuck you, they got to die on their own terms. Not many gay people get to have that.
Yeah, I would say bittersweet is a fair way to describe it, but I definitely wouldn't say it's like tragic.
They both lived a good life. I mean, there was that scene with
Yeah.
Nick Offerman. First off, Nick Offerman. Holy shit, I didn't know he had this kind of like emotional depth in him. I was very impressed. Because they play against type here, because Nick Offerman, because of Parks and Rec, is kind of known as this libertarian, hardball kind of guy. So him seeing that as like a doomsday prepper at first, and then over the course of the episode becoming more and more like tender, sweet, was very nice.
Mm-hmm.
There's a specific line I want to draw attention to.
I like you older. Older means we're still here.
Frank is in his like 30s or 40s when we first meet him in like 07, right? Which means he was a gay man in his 20s during the 80s, during the height of the AIDS crisis. Saying it's nice to see us growing old because that means we're surviving hits doubly for someone who most certainly lived through the AIDS crisis. Some people are complaining about how it's different from the game. It is. But I still think it serves a similar purpose. In the game, the purpose of Bill's character is to show what Joel could become if he completely turns himself away from love and just focuses on surviving. In this episode, I think it shows what Joel could become if he let himself open up and accept that love in his life. Here, I think it's a beautiful purpose. And I mean, just the gay love story between the two of them. I mean...
There it is.
When Nick Offerman's like, I'm ready to die too, you were my purpose, there was something beautiful there. You know, being like, if you're dead, I'm dead. You were my life, and I'm happy I got to live it with you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that this was a really good way to make it a little different, because, like, the thing is, it's an adaptation. It's not supposed to be one-to-one, and this kind of thing is what I think makes it special.
When should we deviate, and when should we come back? If it's kind of the same or worse, we stay where the game is. If it's better, we deviate.
I think they did something here that's just a little bit more special than what you see in a lot of like streaming era television. It's just a good, like, self-contained story that really helps further this story, as much as people are saying, like, it didn't further the story at all. Like, it did, though.
It showed something to Joel. There's a really powerful shot when Joel and Ellie first walk up in the house and Joel sees that those flowers are wilted. And if you look at Joel, you can see that he's like, oh no. I realize this because Joel knows Frank would have never let those flowers wilt. And even if he wasn't able to, he would have made Bill do it. So if those flowers were wilting, that means something happened. This also doubles up because remember in the first episode how 80s music starts playing at the very end and you think it's just a clever little thing, you don't actually think it's happening in the show?
Yeah.
Well, I realized at the end that 80s music started playing in the first episode because that meant that Bill and Frank had died.
Yeah.
I like how one of the first things we see was Nick Offerman raid a Home Depot. I need to get something lighthearted out on the way here. That was very funny.
Yeah. It was also great that he took him to Arby's on the first date.
Fuck you, motherfucker!
I've been waiting to say it this entire time.
If I feed you, then every bum you talk to about it is gonna show up here looking for a free lunch. And this is not an Arby's.
Arby's didn't have free lunch, it was a restaurant.
So when they get in the truck, they play a cassette, and like the song is meaningful in the context of the show. In the game, though, when they get into the truck and they start playing the music, the song they play is I'll Never Get Out of This World Alive by Hank Williams.
Well, better than nothing.
Which is the theme song to another HBO show, the animated comedy The Life and Times of Tim. So if they had kept that in there, it would have been very funny to me and the other 10 people who watched The Life and Times of Tim.
Which reminds me, the ending shot of this episode, sort of being like a parallel to the first game's menu. Beautiful final shot. Beautiful final song. It was nice to see a gay romance depicted like this. We're not going to be talking about what we think happens next because we already know what happens next. But, you know who else knows what's happening next?
Jesus.
Yeah, I guess. You! The person watching this first edition of The Last of Bomb Squad. Thank you also very much for watching. Go on down to the comment section below and let me know. Have you played The Last of Us games? Which one's your favorite? Do you like the games? Do you like the story? Were you excited for the show? Do you think Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey are perfect casting? What do you think of the show so far? What's your favorite episode? And finally, did you take her to Arby's on the first date? Comment below and let me know. And while you're down there, hit the like button so we know how much you like us. Hit the subscribe button so we know how much you love us. And hit the bell icon so you know exactly when we upload new videos. Thank you again so very much for watching. We'll see you guys in about 3 weeks when we do this again. Bye.
Farewell.